as folks are gathering, we'll go ahead and get our session rolling today. It's warming up again out there, and I'm happy that you all have chosen to spend a few minutes wherever you are joining us in the 30-minute lunch and learn with Olabisi. I'm Elizabeth Beggins. I'm the Maryland Agriculture Outreach Specialist for the Million Acre Challenge, which is a collaborative project with 6 founding organizational partners. And we have a goal of 1 million acres of Maryland agricultural land in regenerative practices by 2030. And with any luck, we're going to be able to launch this poll so that we have a sense of who's with us today. We may gain a few more as we get going, but those of you who are here hopefully can do this. Are you guys seeing that?
Yes.
Good.
I'm seeing the slide. I'm not seeing the actual poll, but.
Are others seeing the poll or just this, still the slide?
I have the poll up.
I have the poll too.
Okay, good.
Okay.
If you can't see it for some reason, the slide that's up tells you what we're asking in the poll, and you're welcome to answer that in chat if you're on the phone or if it's not showing up for you. I'll leave that running for just another minute, but I'll go ahead and mention just a couple things about the Million Acre Challenge. You heard our goal in the previous slide. We do work with farmers to bring soil health and regenerative practices into into the foreground. Some of the work that we do is captured here. Oops, I'm sorry. I just did something funny to my slide. There we go. Soil health benchmark study, which is spearheaded by PASA, Pennsylvania Association for Sustainable Ag. It's a long-term study that Lisa Garfield runs through Future Harvest for us, and a number of our producers are involved in that, and just kind of establishing trends, not just for their own farms, but across the state. The farmer-to-farmer networking is a key component of what we do, and you're doing that right now, and we have other opportunities, some of them on farm. So keep your eyes open for those via our social media channels. That's usually the best way to find out what's coming down the pike. And then also our monthly newsletters, which many of you are probably already receiving. Let me see if I can stop the poll. Hang on 1 second. Okay, we have some farmers. We have some folks who want to become farmers. We have farm service providers all with us today. And interesting staggered split around what folks are interested in learning more about. The top 2 are mixed species cover crops and farm diversity. And then right in line with one another are all of the other 4: funding and farmer-to-farmer networks and reduced synthetic fertilizer and herbicide use, and planting green. So thanks for taking a minute with that. All right, that QR code there, if you click on it, will take you to our most recent newsletter, which came out yesterday, if you didn't get that or receive that. That's a really good way to keep up with us. It is just monthly, so we don't land in your inbox all that often. And it seems like there's usually a wide variety of information there, not just from Million Acre Challenge, but from other organizations and advocates for soil health across the state and the region and the nation. We do encourage you to go ahead and enroll in the challenge. You can do that There are buttons within that newsletter. There are also opportunities to do that from our website. It's just a good way for us to keep track of who's with us and what kind of farming they are doing, how many acres, what kinds of practices, and really just establish some data for what's happening in the soil health arena across the state. I want to call attention to our RCPP, Regional Conservation Partnership Program, which is a funding opportunity. Again, it is reviewed in the newsletter and in some detail, but the key component there for you to take home is if you're interested in exploring whether you can be eligible for some funding opportunities for your soil health goals, you'll need to express interest through your NRCS office. So definitely check into that. On June 22nd, just a couple weeks from now, we have a farmer panel, The Origins of Regenerative Agriculture, where we've invited 4 regional farmers from the BIPOC community to join us to talk about regenerative ag in the context of their cultural and ethnic heritage. So we're excited about that. Today's event and that event are all being held in conjunction with Immigrant Heritage Month and Juneteenth. There's our social media channels there at the bottom, and Lisa Garfield, my colleague, and I, who are both here today, can be reached at those email addresses. All right, I get the pleasure of giving a little rundown of Olabisi now. She is farming in Bowie, Maryland at Heritage Farm. She came to the US from Western Nigeria 4 years ago, I believe. Is that right, Olabisi?
More than that.
More, I'm sorry. Okay,
No
I
problem.
had the years wrong, but definitely from Western Nigeria. Olabisi grows African crops, mostly leafy greens, that are harder to find here and appreciated by others who have similar cultural heritage and food culture heritage. She participates in the Future Harvest Beginning Farmer Training Program, and she was the first place winner of our Count Your Acres sweepstakes back in the beginning of the year. In addition to farming, she works as a community support worker, and we are thrilled that you're here with us today. Thank you for taking time. We're going to run through these questions. So I'm going to skip past this slide real quick and just start by asking Olabisi, like, okay, you won the big one. You won the first prize, and you sent this picture to me of what you chose to do with your prize money. Can you tell us a little bit more about kind of how you made or why you made those choices?
I got this gift with the prize money because I really need to control weed in my farm. So the fabric is, I use the fabric to control weed in my work part area. And these 2 wonderful books, they are very nice. So because I plan to expand my production, to increase my production this year, and I need to learn more about new method of growing organically. So I've learned a lot from these 2 books. Thank you.
Thank you. Has anybody else in the room experienced those books? I know Elliot Coleman was a sort of a mentor to me, and just through his books, I didn't know him personally. Many years ago when I was still producing, he's been on the scene a long time. Speaking of weeds, Olabisi, let's talk a little bit about kind of how you are using green waste in your operation. You know, what's your process for getting rid of them, but also reincorporating them?
So I get rid of the weeds to create a planting space for my plant. But I don't dispose them. They are very important in the farm. They add a lot of nutrients to the soil. So I just after weighing them, I always pack them on a side to decompose for some days. Then I introduce them back into the soil in form of manure. So they had a lot of nitrogen content to the soil. They also improve the texture of the soil. When I started this land space, when I started growing here, that place was like clay soil, real clay soil, very hard. And this is going to be my 3rd year of growing here. So it's just, the soil is very rich now and loose. So it allows a lot of easy aeration and water uptake by the plants.
And did I understand that you also use some of your kitchen waste for the
Yes.
same kind of process? Mhm.
Yes, I don't dispose my kitchen waste. So every time I have any waste in the kitchen, I just spread it on the ground, leave it there to decompose. And when it's time for me to grow, I just go there and turn over the soil and put my plant there.
And are you making kind of mounds of the green waste, or are you just spreading it out and letting it kind of decompose on the surface?
During winter, when I'm not growing anything on the ground, I spread it there. Every time I use anything in the kitchen, just spread it there to dry and decompose there. But at this time, I don't spread it. I just pack them in a spot where they can dry up and decompose with other green leaves before bringing them back into the soil.
Do you have any weeds that you don't add back in? Are there things that you have to be more careful about keeping out of your green manure piles?
I don't like anything of anything like paper. I don't use paper. I don't use nylon, any polythene bag, any bottle, anything chemical. I don't want it on my planting space. And I like to anything moist, watery. I don't like to expose it because they attract pests in that area. So I always bury things like that, like cantaloupe waste, anything that is really moisture. I always bury it to prevent,
sort of
yes,
an insect inflection. Yeah,
something like that.
So I'm fascinated by anybody who farms entirely using hand tools, but I'd like to explore with you a little bit, Olabisi. You took some pictures of some of your preferred tools, and I think we get a pretty good idea of what that clay soil might look like in some of these pictures underneath some of those tools. But tell us a little bit about the tools that you use and how you use them. Do you have favorites? That kind of thing.
Yes, I choose those simple farm tools because they are very easy to get. They are very easy to maintain. They are not expensive at all. And most importantly, they are very gentle on the soil. So what I grow needs really loose soil, and they need constant water uptake. So I don't like to use mechanic equipment on the soil that will overwork the soil and make it so mushy. So, and my favorite is the garden fork, the one I'm holding there.
Which looks really narrow. I like the size of it.
Mark is asking, he mentions in the comments that there's a lot of clay where he is in West Virginia, and wondering if you have seen your soil organic matter increase using these methods.
A lot, yes. I've seen that. Especially this year, I have to remove some soil and use it for container because it's the green matter also add volume to the soil.
So you'll be putting some things in containers and
Yes.
using that soil. That's great.
Yes.
It looks really rich in this one photograph on the left there. So the photo on the right is just a little bit blurry, but we'll talk about what's happening there so folks have an understanding. I know that you almost exclusively are growing crops that would be traditional in Nigeria. And it seemed like a lot of them were sort of leafy greens. But before we get to a lot of detail about what the crops are, I wanted you to help us learn how you plant them. I love the technique that you're using to deal with your small seeds. Why don't you tell us a little more about that?
All the seed, all these seeds are very, very tiny and kind of expensive. So I just decide to find a way to plant them so that they will be widely spread on the soil. And I don't want them to overgrown in one area and leave some area open. So what I do is to get soil in a bowl, like the one you're looking at there, and put little seed, very little, and mix it really good in the soil. Mix it together with the soil. Then I spread it on the growing bed that I've already prepared to grow the seed. So by the time they sprout, they're gonna, come out with space and not too many seeds, not too many plants growing in one area. So that's the method I use.
So you're mixing it with some of the soil that you're planting right into just to create more space between all those little seeds.
Yes.
Or, more growing medium between them. And your seed source, where do you like to purchase your seeds?
I like to purchase my seeds on Amazon online, mostly Amazon, Etsy, and eBay.
And do you have, I sometimes worry that maybe they're not reputable, if it's a source that it's hard to know for sure. Have you ever run into any trouble with that, or do you have this particular brand? Are there brands that you like a lot?
I've never run into any trouble with getting seeds online. I believe they are legitimate and good. They always have label.
Are you able to save seed from any of the varieties that you're growing?
Yes, I'm able to save seed from my Callaloo. And sometimes jute, not all the time, jute.
Yes, Callaloo is in the amaranth family. It has
Amaranth,
a lot
yeah.
of seeds.
Yeah, it might, I suppose it might become a weed if you don't manage it well. So I would love to spend a few minutes just hearing about these crops that are pictured here. This may not be everything you grow, but it's a pretty good representation, and kind of how they differ in flavor to you, how you might use them differently, that kind of thing. So maybe sort of starting on the left with water leaf.
So with water leaf, it's very watery. If you want to cook it, you don't use a lot of water to steam it. And most of the time when I cook water leaf, I cook it with kale leaf, because kale leaf is hard and has a lot of fiber. So when you mix it with this, it will be very perfect and it tastes good. Jute leaf is very slippery. So you can blend it the way you cook it, just blend it fresh and boil it just like that. And it's good it's good with fufu. And and the bitter leaf, we have two types of bitter leaf. One is sweet, the other one is really bitter. So just the same way, like the way we cook grains in America. So you can cook the bitter leaf that way. But the bitter one, you can't eat it just like that. You need to add a little bit of bitter leaf with other vegetables like callaloo or water leaf,
So the more bitter one you're mixing with other greens.
with a lot of other greens
Mhm.
to reduce the bitter taste.
Okay. I've had Callaloo. It's the only one of all of these that I've tried, and I wish I could have it weekly because it's so delicious. Do you have a favorite from this group?
My favorite is the jute leaf and bitter leaf. I like to eat bitter leaf with, I can eat it with any other vegetable. And that is very, a lot of African, they eat the water leaf, they eat the bitter leaf, like people from Cameroon, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, especially people from Cameroon, they like bitter leaf a lot. So jute leaf is very common in Nigeria. I've never seen Sierra Leonean or Cameroonian eating jute leaf. For Nigerian, the western part of Nigeria, they eat, that's the favorite leaf in the western part. So that's my favorite.
And I
So
will.
is it the same jute that's grown for fiber? So if you let it get more mature, is it used as a fiber plant? We have here, we have, rugs and things that are made from jute. It's a very fibrous. Is that the
No,
same that you're aware of? No.
Different.
it's
Interesting.
different.
Yeah, I'd love to explore that a little bit. You're right, Lisa. It's the same, and they're they seem a little bit indestructible. A really hardy, fibrous material that we use on a floor covering.
Yeah, the stalk is really hard. The stalk of the jute leaf is really hard. Maybe they use the stalk or something like that.
Yeah, or it could be a different
plant.
cultivar of the same one that's grown for fiber. And can you grow all of these here in the summer in intense heat? A lot of the greens we grow here tend to be cooler weather greens, and it's difficult to have greens in the middle throughout the whole season.
Yeah, jute leaf, water leaf bits or jute leaf, they like a lot of it. At the same time, you need to water it almost every day. So water leaf is very stubborn. If the weather is not really hot, you can just be spreading the seed on the ground and it's not going to grow.
And the family of greens on the bottom right there, I would like to ask you to pronounce it because I might ruin it. I want to say jama.
Jama.
Jama, okay.
Yes, that's very popular in the Cameroonian eat that a lot.
And flavor wise, how does it differ from any of the other ones?
It has the same flavor like callaloo.
Okay.
And it has a lot of fiber.
Well, I would like to have all of these in my lineup. I might have to think about ordering some seeds. So Olabisi, you now have a new leased space that brings your total growing area to about 1/4 of an acre, and there's no water at that space. So I wanted to give folks a chance to hear about what your plans are for that.
So one good thing about this new site is that I have the opportunity to get it. It's very close to where I live. But the problem here is that there's no water at all. I can't even think of how to get supply if I have to pay for it. But recently I thought about harvesting or collecting rainwater. So I devised that, okay, let me just assemble like something like barrel and get a funnel for it to collect the rainwater and save it to water my farm. And I came up with this simple rainwater collection system here.
So Olabisi and I have been talking behind the scenes this week, and the one on the far right is another example of something that we're exploring together, sort of just something we came up with that looks interesting. And it's nothing more than a garbage pail with a lid that somebody has inverted and created holes in the top. One question I think I have is whether that you need to create some kind of screening to keep the mosquito larvae out. I think a lot of folks that are capturing rainwater try to find a way to do that so that they're not just creating a breeding ground for mosquitoes.
So the best way to prevent mosquito from growing there is to just make it cover it, don't expose it, so that the mosquito cannot get inside and lay their eggs and start breeding in the water.
Mm-hmm.
So,
How do you cover it and also allow rainwater in? What's the technique?
the techniques is we have different kind of funnel, like the yellow bowl you see there is a funnel that you insert into the barrel. So it has to be tightly, you need to tighten it really good with the barrel to prevent any opening. And you can use nets to close the opening of the funnel to the barrel.
Yeah. And then we've also looked at they almost look like an inverted umbrella, but I wonder how those would hold up in a big windy blow. It seems like they might just lift off and blow away. But I love this idea, fairly straightforward to construct. I'll go back and see if I can find the link to the one on the right and share that in chat, so other folks can see that if they want to. We are actually coming up, believe it or not, on 12:30, but I want to give folks a chance to ask other questions they may have.
Yeah, Jeffrey made a great comment. Do you want to ask that question, Jeffrey?
Okay, you want me? Okay, turn my mute phone back on. Yeah, I'm just curious to ask because I've been attending many of these some of these ethnic vegetable seminars, and I found out that like a lot of the ones that are labeled as West African are actually commonly eaten actually across the world. I mean, I've seen them in Latin America, South Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia markets. And I would like to know if there's, for example, the Callaloo, I recognize that as something that my grandmother from southern China planted when I was a child. So we used to eat that and had called something else, of course. But I was wondering if there's any effort to like make these, I mean, instead of like a silo of like ethnic, like share them as like something as, or market them as pan-ethnic. And I should be interested in like trying to help form like maybe a cross-reference table so that when we're talking about like, let's say someone from India or Vietnam sees Callaloo, they know exactly what it is because they grew up with it too. Do you understand my question?
So if I understand your question, you were asking me that
have you made any attempt to try to? They made the what's the so-called West African vegetables made it known to like to other groups on a pan-ethnic basis so that they can recognize it and maybe have access to some of the stuff that you're growing and you can share with them.
Yeah, I know different country. They have different names for most of these grain leaves, like jute leaf. They also grow it in Philippines. A lot of Filipinos, they eat jute leaf and they call it different, but I don't know specifically what other continents call it.
But it's not just calling it so that you can make it available and share it with other people.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had I didn't plan to do that, and I've never had the opportunity to share with.
Because it is something I'm interested in. So actually, I'm in Upper Marlboro, so very close to Bowie. Maybe we can work with you and try to make it if you're interested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jeffrey, if you want to put your contact information in the chat for Olabisi, maybe she can reach out at some point and pursue this idea. I know, Olabisi, that you're considering trying to get involved in the Bowie market. So that might be another way for you all to connect once your growing operation is at that capacity.
Yes, that's true. So, okay.
Okay.
So I'm planning to, introduce my products to the Bowie market. The only market I can locate in my area is Bowie, where we have other local farmers that goes there on weekend to market their farm products.
Right.
And that's my planned market area.
And Olabisi did tell me that she has quite a strong following of folks who are interested in making purchases of these kinds of things, and that largely they're other folks from Africa. But I think, Jeffrey, what you're saying is that there may be people from other continents who would also be interested, but they just don't necessarily know where to find them.
Right, exactly. Because they're not available in the local supermarkets, so they may not realize that, like, someone, they might be available in Bowie. They don't have to travel on, I don't know, somewhere around Virginia to find a market that sells it.
Right.
Yeah, so with that, because I'm still, this is what I just started doing, and I believe in this area you have to do everything by law. I believe it takes time to increase this product to reach everybody and to reach where everybody can have access to it. So with time, I'm going to work on that.
Well, obviously, Mark has asked how many acres you own versus how many you're leasing.
I have less than a quarter acre, and I'm leasing, let me say, about 80% of the quarter acre in total.
So I would love to give Olabisi time. I asked her a question in our conversation earlier, and if folks have time to stick around long enough for her to answer, I asked her what what she remembers from her childhood and her farming experiences, and then one of the foods that she remembers being harvested and made in Nigeria. And if you all have time, I'd love to wrap up with that story, kind of sort of your earliest memory and what it was you said you made as a family that that you enjoyed. And I'm going to take us off screen share so that we can all just see each other for a second.
So growing up in Africa to me is really fun. I have the opportunity to enjoy outdoor activities. And I remember what I like to do in the farm. I love to produce. I really love to produce. And my favorite product is gari. That is the most popular flour that we use to produce fufu in Africa. And you can see that in every other African country. So anytime we harvest cassava, we use cassava, fresh cassava to produce gari. You can produce other products from cassava, as many as you know. So I really like to produce gari from cassava. Why my other siblings, they don't like that because it takes time. So I just produce it and everybody in the family enjoys it.
So we talked about how in the States, there's that children's story about the little red hen who wants to make, I forget what it is, cake or bread or cookies or something. And she asks all her farm friends if they want to eat some. And of course they do, but then she wants to know who's going to help her plant the wheat and tend the wheat and harvest the wheat and grind the wheat in order to make it into a baked good. And that's what her story reminded me of, just you know, her brothers wanted to eat it, but not so much be involved in
Yes.
in the creating of it. Yeah, it sounds delicious. It really sounds delicious.
Have you, are you aware of anyone growing cassava here? Have you considered trying to grow it here?
I've not tried it. I've not tried at all. Although it's hard to grow here with the weather.
You need a tunnel. You need a high tunnel or a greenhouse. There, you might be interested. There's a researcher on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, Dr. Nadine Burton at the
Okay.
University of Maryland Eastern Shore Demonstration Farm. And she is experimenting with growing cassava
Oh,
here.
wow.
So it might be interesting for you. She also has developed quite a market for Callaloo and for hibiscus.
Okay. Wow.
So she's growing a lot of Jamaican crops here. And
I
there's
think I know her.
you do know her? Yeah.
Yes.
She's doing specialty crops, ethnic crops, and yeah, so.
Okay. Yes, Dr. Burton. Yes, I've met her before.
Okay, good.
Although I guess I'm
Thank you.
blanking out right now. She has another last name now. But it's gone out of my head. Anyway, I'm sure you can find her as Dr. Nadine Burton. Stubbs, that's it. Nadine Burton Stubbs. And yeah, she was also they were having opportunities at UMES for folks to come together in conversation. They're small producers. So that's a good thing to keep your eye on, any of you who are interested in ethnic crops.
Okay.
Mark, Lee, Connie, other questions before we wrap up? All right. Well, it's been great to have everybody here, and Olabisi, you are inspiring, and the conversation has made me hungry.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity you give me. I appreciate it.
Thanks everybody for being here, and do enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.
Thanks.